all for joining. I'm really excited about being here today and walking you through this webinar. We've got some great stuff. We've got lots of content. We're going to go through it, but we're going to make sure you guys understand. We're going to give you that step by step. By the end of this, you'll be able to take this information back, apply it to your own PMO, whether you're building a PMO or running a PMO. Either or, this material is for you. Let's jump into it. So my name is Bill Dow. This is a PMO lifecycle, building, running, and shutting down. Specifically comes out of my book, The PMO Lifecycle, of the same name. But today we're going to focus on one thing, and it's how to build a PMO. And I'm really excited about this conversation. So everyone thinks they can build a PMO, right? I hear it all the time. Everyone thinks they can just naturally build a PMO. It's easy. Just get started. You'll be fine. This is a huge mistake and one of the worst advice that you could ever hear. It is not easy to build a PMO, okay? Let's be very clear. I've ran 10 across my career. I started in 2002. It's 2021. In 2002, I worked at AT&T and ran my first PMO in the data warehouse space. 2005, those two companies, Singular and AT&T, merged. I took on my second, much larger PMO, still in the data warehouse space. Moved to Microsoft from 2005 to 2019. I ran 7 PMOs there. I started speaking and doing conferences and really training all around the world. And then now I'm running my largest PMO with 35 people, 3 managers that report to me at University of Washington. And so I have done this before. This is there's not many people in the world that have ran 10 PMOs. I have 30 plus years of hands-on experience. Like I said, Microsoft, University of Washington, I teach locally. Singular, AT&T, in 2020, I was selected one of the top 16 PMO leaders of the world. I've been a speaker and a conference speaker since 2008. Various PMI events, London, England, for the PMO conference. I've got my own YouTube channel, Dow Publishing YouTube. We've got a ton of videos up there. Please go subscribe. I got a blog at BillDowPMP.com. I've written 4 books: The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down, Project Management Communication Tools, The Tactical Guide for Building a PMO, which was #1 on Amazon for years, and the Project Management Communication Bible, 2008, developed by Wiley. I have my own publishing company that has published those 3 books. So lots of experience, lots of passion. Absolutely love this world of PMOs and project management. So very simple agenda today. We're going to talk about building a PMO. We're going to give you those tactical steps. We'll do a quick wrap up and give you some more information. Okay, so let's jump right into building a PMO. Developing a PMO is no easy task and something that many people are pushed into with no guidance and no training, right? I've seen a ton of experts say, do this and do that, and frankly, these suggestions in many cases won't work. Because I've built 10 in my career, and I literally read what these experts are saying, and I have no idea. Does that make me stupid around PMOs? I don't think so. It makes no sense in some of the things that they say. Unreadable in some cases. What I can tell you is you need a solid foundation. Just building a house, right, on cement or quicksand, the foundation makes a big difference. Every company, every PMO, every management team is different. So it's important to understand that the environment that you're walking into and building a PMO, you really need to know that environment first. Or if you're changing an existing PMO, it always comes down to the foundation. So you're either building a PMO, you need to understand what's going on, or you're changing and updating an existing PMO, you need to understand that environment, you need to understand the environment you're going into, the leadership team, to build that foundation, okay? So That's what we're going to do today. We're going to walk you through what I've done to build 10 PMOs across 3 different companies. When I step back and look at the 10 PMOs, right? Look at the 10 different managers, the 10 different organizations, the 10 sets of politics I had to deal with. That was no easy task. And when I look back across my career, what has always been that single one thing was this solid foundation. I built the foundation and then I adjusted and tweaked along the way. And we're going to build into those now. There are 12 steps that I have documented in my PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, Shutting Down book to building a PMO. Start with a plan, schedule, right? Obtain executive support, create the PMO staples, select the 4 P's of your PMO, select your model, create your maturity model, which includes categories and measurements, obtain your PMO resources, select your PMO training, implement your PMO methodologies, select your PMO reporting, select your tools and processes. Your PMO is now complete. Okay, and there's some stuff you have to do with that as well, but these are the 12 steps to building a PMO. I'll pause and let you have a look at that. Make sense? Yeah, there's a huge amount of work there. And it's actually quite overwhelming if you don't have the step-by-step process. If I just gave you that chart, you go, yeah, great, thank you, but how do I go tactical? And a lot of people didn't even know there was 12 steps. Well, that's what we're going to give you today. But that's it. It's just these 12 steps, right? To build a PMO, it's just these 12 steps. They are done in order, though. I think that's really important to understand. They're done in a particular order. But most PMOs fundamentally are the same, right? Yeah, the industries are different, the orgs are different, the leaderships are different, but the foundation of a PMO is generally the same, and we're going to walk you through that. But when I take a new PMO role, I literally take my book out and I follow these same steps. And someone say, hey, you know what, you're an expert in this? That's actually kind of sad. And I'd say, you know what? No, it's not sad at all. Because it shows you how good this material is and how I can go from company to company to company and use this same material. So I'm actually very, very proud of the fact that I pull this stuff out and keep using it over and over again because it just works. So start with a plan, start with a schedule, right? That was the number one task. Every project needs a schedule. You could be building a house, a plane, a software product, you need a schedule, right? Building a PMO is no different. You need a schedule. We've seen tons and tons of articles on why project schedules are critical to projects. I'm not going to repeat that information, but what I wanted to do was really call out some of the advantages and how I've used a schedule, right? So when I build a schedule and build a PMO and use a PMO schedule, it gives my leadership a list of tasks and components of what I'm building and how long it should take me to build those. It gives me a whole new formality, right? Because when I have a schedule, I have a project, and that project holds people accountable. It puts more rigor in what we're doing, and it really drives that, hey, you're actually executing a project and you're going to get this thing done. It also allows you to plan around big company events and ensure your schedules align with company events. If there's a major go live or there's major things, you maybe want to implement or not implement things based on what's happening in your organization. So a schedule will allow you to align that up. And here it is here. It's just a simple project schedule. It's called the PMO Build Schedule. It's been downloaded over 500 times in my store. It's free. It's based on the PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, Shutting Down book. You can go grab that. It's going to give you a starting point, but really get you set up and started in running your organization and building your organization. Here's a work breakdown structure view of the same schedule. Comes from the book. Your executives are going to like the boxes a little bit more than the actual MPP file. Either or, it's the same schedule. You want to drive that out and build that out. So you can see clearly that having a project schedule for building a PMO is critical to this process, right? It just gives you that much needed visibility that your leadership is going to want to see as you progress in building out your organization. Don't wing it. Have a schedule, right? It's going to give you the foundation. It's give you the steps to really build yourself a world-class PMO. It's free. I'll always make it free. It's up at dellpublishingllc.com store. Go grab a copy. Get yourself started with building your PMO. The next stage was executive support, and I can't stress how important this is, right? You have to have executives supporting you while building your PMO and, of course, while running your PMO. So without executive support, do not build a PMO. Dead stop. Do not build a PMO without executive support. I've run 10 PMOs, and I can tell you, if you don't have the support you need from the leadership table, you will struggle in this role. So let's jump in now. Let's look at executive support in a little bit more detail. One of the things that you really have to focus on is getting that executive support immediately. So if you're new to the role, you just got hired as a PMO, manager, director, whatever the case may be, you're going to have that executive support. You want to hold on to that support for all you can because it's critical. So there's a thing called the PMO cycle. So what's the PMO cycle? It's really around your executive support. So let me walk you through it. Your PMO starts up. You've got your executive. You got a smile. You got a handshake. The world is your oyster. You are going to get anything you want while you're building this PMO, and you've got that amazing support from that executive. But what happens is about 3 to 5 years later, okay, that support gets a little blurry. It's not as solid as it once was. And that's because the average executive stays in their spot for 3 to 5 years. Then your PMO, without executive support, your PMO shuts down. Remember, I've ran 10. Your PMO shuts down. You no longer have executive support. The programs and projects execute in a variety of different ways. But then what happens? And you're long gone in most cases, but what happens is some major event occurs, some executive goes, we need a PMO. And guess what happens? The cycle goes on and on and on, and you are going to live this cycle over and over and over and over again. 10 PMOs for a reason. I've lived that cycle. Have you guys experienced that before? Have you seen that happen? Then you were like, what do I do? Yep, it happens, right? 10 PMOs, because that's what's happened. I was running a PMO, got laid off, the PMO got shut down. I was running a PMO, an executive left, the PMO got shut down. This is a huge part of a project manager's job, a PMO manager's job. So your role is to secure your executive. Don't just secure one, get 2, get 3, right? While you're actively running your PMO, so you can avoid this shutdown for as long as possible. I cannot say this is going to happen to you, right? I can't say that. I have no idea what's going to happen in your organization, but I've ran 10 PMOs in my career, okay? 10. The chances are high this will happen to you as well. So I just want to digress for a second. I want to go left. What's it like being a PMO manager, right? What's it like being a director, right? Well, that's a whole course by itself, right? I could create you a whole course on what it's like being a manager, but let me tell you a couple key points. It's the best job in the world. It's the worst job in the world. You have to constantly be selling. You need to sell your PMO, your services in your PMO, and your PMO people. Relationships are key, from your executives to your peers, to the people that work for you. You have to focus on relationships in absolutely everything you do. Look wide, not deep, right? Project managers are amazing at looking deep. PMO managers have to look wide. You have to trust your people to do their jobs. You could do that for them. There's no question. You're probably an amazing project manager that could run any project in your PMO. But it's not scalable. So you have to empower your people. So yes, you could run these projects, but if you're running a PMO that's got 600 or 300 projects or 50 projects or 80 projects, whatever the case may be, you're not scalable. So you have to empower your people and trust that they'll do their jobs. Okay? That's a key component for being a PMO manager. Creating PMO staples, right? The next stage in this process are the PMO staples. This is often a really interesting conversation because some PMO managers live and breathe these staples like I do, and some people go, yeah, I'm not interested in that. And I'm like, whoa, okay, that could be very, very interesting in how they actually execute. My advice is stick to the basics, right? Make sure you're getting the core components set up because this is how you're going to run your organization. You can always tweak, you can always adjust, but for now, get the basic staples set up and tweak and adjust as you mature, right? But you have to remember the why. Why are you creating staples, right? You're doing this to set a purpose and a vision for everyone working in your organization. I can't stress that enough. The mission statements, the vision statements, for example, they become rally calls, right, to people working in your organization. Why do I get up and come to bed or come to work every day? Get out of bed and come to work because I'm excited about the mission. I'm excited about the vision. If you've got people in your organization that are excited about the mission and the vision, you're going to have an amazing organization. Well, you create these staples to do that. So here are the staples that you must set up for your organization while you're building your PMO. Mission statement, vision statement, PMO value and KPIs, and we'll talk about that. PMO budget, and I put a question mark because it's very different from organization, and your PMO walking deck, and I'll explain what that is. These are the 5 things that you have to set up. These are the 5 things that I call the staples of the organization, and they're critical to get you going. I love the PMO mission statement. I love it. Right? I just love it because it really gets people excited about your organization. Why are they getting out of bed and rushing to work? Because this is the mission that your organization's driving. What is the mission of my org? What do we do here? Why are we here? I love it, right? And there's thousands of examples of what makes a good mission statement and how you should write them, right? Go Google it. I put some examples here. There's more in my book. The PMO will provide customers a high quality, fast, cheaper project, right? The mission of the PMO is to drive a consistent approach. Whatever your mission statement is, it's the rally call. It's getting people excited about working in your organization. And I love that. As much as I love the mission statement, I love the vision statement as well. The vision's this big grand gesture, right? Visionary. It inspires your organization. Grand and visionary, you should be shooting for the moon, right? And what is the vision? Where do we want to go? And have fun with it, right? Make sure it's inspirational and you're looking to the future, you're looking to drive big changes, right? Have fun with this, but get yourself a good, inspiring vision statement that people are going to absolutely love. When I look at PMO value, when I look at KPIs when building it, I want to be very, very clear. Your PMO value will be a constant thorn in your side, right? Because unlike any other organizational group in your company, the PMO will constantly need to be selling the value. What are the components of value to an organization, right? Consistency, visibility, transparency, leadership, right? Portfolio, project, reports, dashboard, focus. There's a ton of different value propositions, value statements of what a PMO can bring. But as a PMO manager, this is a constant thing that you're going to be dealing with. So you need to have these at the ready. The second aspect is around KPIs, and I think they're important. I'm just not really clear about building them or establishing and creating them while you're building your PMO. So this is what you create and establish when you're running your PMO and people are up and running. But don't worry right away about getting a ton of KPIs set up. You got to get that maturity. You really want to crawl, walk, run with this. So here are the number of projects and programs completed on time, number on budget, number of customers, right? So there are metrics out there. But when you're first building a PMO and you're establishing yourself as a leader, you may not necessarily want to build a ton of these KPIs and these metrics right away. But certainly down the line, you want to do that. The PMO budget, I put that question mark initially because it's very different, and it's also really interesting from PMO manager to manager because some of them are very active in budgets, some of them never touch a budget. Some companies will give you full budget support, right? And some will say, nope, no, all the budgets are at higher levels, right? So when you're looking at budget, there are definitely things you want to consider and will radically differ from company to company. But look at your staffing costs, look at your vendor costs, training, tools and licenses, right? Any additional vendor costs, any budgets, right? This budget information is all over the map from company to company. So sit down with your leadership, really understand the role you play, and then adjust and tweak accordingly, right? And then the last part of the staples, and one of the changes I've made in my last about 3 or 4 PMOs, was building this PMO walking deck. By building this walking deck, you have a marketing document that you can go out and you can sell and market your PMO. Lots of talk about not selling your PMO. They're dead wrong. I can tell you, you have to sell your PMO on a regular basis. One of the main components of running a PMO is selling. What value is this PMO going to bring? And the walking deck goes a huge way in selling that. Create your PMO walking deck for your organization today. You will not regret having that and going back. And when you meet customers for the first time, you've got a walking deck. When you talk with your executives, you've got a walking deck. So many PMO managers miss this. Create your walking deck, okay? Can't stress enough how important that is. So what's in it, right? Great question. What's in a walking deck? Your mission, your vision, your problems and challenges, your org chart, your service offerings, your maturity model, your process improvement projects, a roadmap, right? These are all the goodness. These are all the things that you're going to put in there and say, this is what my organization does. Trust me, don't miss this opportunity. Create this presentation, constantly keep it updated. It is not a one and done document. You're going to love it. You're going to love having that marketing deck and that walking deck, and you're going to absolutely love how you can show off your PMO in your organization. And just watch how many people and how many other folks have that and don't have that. You'll be one of the only people that have that, which means you'll be able to keep selling your organization, which is critical. Establishing these PMO staples is critical for your organization. We just covered lots and lots of details to get you up and running in your PMO. Don't ignore the importance of creating these for your organization, as these staples will really help you move your organization forward, right? Take the time, build out the materials before you move to the next phase of this particular project, which is the 4 P's of your PMO. Not all PMOs are created equal, right? And there's an understanding at the very beginning, right? You got to understand, what is your PMO going to be all about? Not all PMOs are project management PMOs. Not all PMOs are program and project management. This is most likely the scenario, but it's not always the case, right? At the very beginning of the build process, figure out the P's in your PMO, okay? So, will your PMO have portfolio? Will it have program? Will it have project? Right? The 4th P is one that everyone forgets about, is the organization itself, the actual organization. Like finance, like marketing, the PMO is an organization. It's got people, it's got process, it's got tools, it has budget, right? It needs to be treated like an organization. But there's lots of different combinations. You could have a program project PMO, you could have a project PMO, you could have a portfolio PMO, right? There's all these various combinations of the PMOs, and you need to establish that at the very beginning of this process. And don't forget the 4th PMO, because it's always there. This is what it looks like. This is where you go and you take this graphic and you say, executives, what are we going to have? We're going to have portfolio and program. We're going to have program project. We're just going to have project, just going to have program. Doesn't matter what they tell you, but you need to know that when you're building and designing your PMO. So work with your executives on what methodologies will be in your PMO. Will you have agile components? Will you just be program? Will you just be project? Will you be whatever the case may be, right? All of these are critical to know and establish from the very beginning, and then grow as you mature your PMO, right? You may start with just a project management PMO, but then all of a sudden you need to create some programs, so you're going to need some program managers, right? It happens all the time. So get that started. Maybe you start with program and project, right? Your executives are going to have a huge say in that. The second component in the 4 P's of your PMO is you have to determine the model. Are you a supportive PMO? Are you a directive PMO? Are you a controlling PMO? Right, you need to understand there, and you may need to educate your executives of what they mean, but you're going to want to have that conversation, right? So a supportive PMO does this, a directive PMO does that, a controlling one does that. There's like 10 different versions out there, but you got to talk to your executives because they need to know, and you need to know what's expected of you, because you're going to run your PMO very differently. Okay, so you've had that conversation, you go to the next step, which is the model and the methodology. Now you marry the two together. So now it's time to develop the different methodologies, right? The executives gave you the P's and the model. Now you take that and combine those processes. For example, PMO that's project management and is directive is very different than a project management supportive PMO. Right? You need, as a PMO manager, you need to know, because your templates, your tools, the direction of your PMO is going to be very, very different. And so what I've done is I've created a little mapping table here. You've got your PMO models, and then you've got portfolio, program, and project, and you start saying yes and no, and you start filling that in, but you fill it in for what your executives want. But there's a ton of combinations here. Right? And so very, very important to really look at the model and the different methodologies you're going to use and come up with that with your executives. Right? You're not creating the playbooks. You're not creating the processes at this point. You're just locking this down with your executives so you can then start building that out. Right? But it's going to be very different on the KPIs and how and what people you need. Right? So it's very, very important to lock this as you start building out your PMO. And this is why I keep saying the order to which I gave you this is directly the order to which you need to follow this. Okay? So let's jump into a PMO maturity model. That's the next stage, and one I think is really important to get set up. And again, you'll crawl, walk, run, you'll mature it along the way. So at this stage of the build process, you're going to start establishing a maturity model to which you're going to mature your organization. So yes, if you build this early, you're set up and you'll know what you're going to start measuring. But building this too late, you're going to have to go back and maybe add items to your PMO. You don't want to do that. Get your maturity model set up. Doesn't mean you have to start measuring, but that will work with your executives of what they want measured. You don't actually have to start measuring, but you got to get the maturity model set up. Okay? So what does a maturity model look like? Well, there's a measurement system and there's measurement categories. When you add those together, you get a maturity model. Okay? And so you'll see the categories from ad hoc to sustained. You'll see the different measurement system. You'll see the different categories from time, budget, resource, cost, whatever the case may be. You're going to marry those up and you'll actually get a maturity model out of that. Okay, here's your measurement system, 1 to 5. There's a ton of different measurement systems out there. This one's great for project management, great for PMOs. One I highly recommend. It's from Dr. Kirshner. He's done an amazing job with this. Just plug and play this one, you are good to go. Then what you're going to do is you're going to have a series of categories, right? Depending on how mature your PMO is, depending on how you make trade-off decisions, determine how you make business value decisions, you're going to have a set of categories. You're going to apply those categories to Dr. Kirshner's ratings and marry those two up. So you can see you've got a current score and a future score. And really the value of the maturity model is the gap in between those two. Okay? So really important to have a maturity model in place as you build a PMO, and then you can worry about actually start to measure. You're going to have to take baseline measurements, and maybe every year you take another measurement. Again, we've got much more detail on that, but it's really important to get those established, right? And get them set up right now. Don't worry about measuring, but get the process set up, right? You could quickly become a bad cop if you're brand new to the organization, brand new to the PMO, and you start measuring too quickly when the organization doesn't have the maturity. So, right, crawl, walk, run with this, right? Make sure that you're really slow, but you get it established so you don't have to go back, but get it established and then start maturing later. Okay? Your PMO staffing model. I think it's critical to understand what resources do you need to run your PMO. And that's going to really be a fun part of this organization, right? And building this PMO, it's really fun to have people and start working with people, right? But this is where we start talking about staffing. This is where we talk, are you a PMO of one? Will you have staff? Will you have a management layer? Will you have admin staff, right? One of the key components of this process is to justify what staff you'll need for your PMO, right? So we'll keep diving here, but it's really, really important. You need to know what services are you going to offer? What are you going to offer? What type of PMO you are to then know what staff you need. So one of the biggest decisions we make in this process is the PMO maturity. I'm sorry, why I stopped there. Is really the PMO model maturity methodology decision, right? A directed PMO is going to be staffed very differently than a supported PMO. These are two different organizations that have very different needs and purposes and therefore need to be staffed differently. One of the tools you use to set this up is your PMO staffing model, right? Put that in my book, used it for years, and absolutely it's an amazing tool from that perspective. So let me walk you through it. Of course, it looks like a RACI. We're a bunch of project managers here. And so let me walk you down, but see it's very different. You have your service offerings of your PMO, provide executive support, provide leadership, provide program, provide project, portfolio, whatever the case may be. What roles do you need? Who are the named people in the roles? And then what's their accountable, responsible consult, right? So this gives you the justification to hire the people you need to do the service offerings. So let me give you an example. Provide portfolio management services, right? Drive organization portfolio, drive the budget process, drive the yearly planning. If you go right and you look up and there's no one named in the portfolio, but that's a service offering your executives want you to have, you now just justified you need to hire someone for that role, right? So you're using this staffing model with the service offerings as a justification for what you need to hire for your organization. How cool is that, right? How cool is that? If you just say, hey, I need to hire a portfolio manager, then go, what? Like, why? No, you want to justify why you need that because these are the service offerings that you said your PMO is going to do. And that's how you need that that's where you need that staffing model, right? So this staffing model I've used for years. I love it. And I put it in front of the leadership table on the leadership staff, and they know exactly the services I'm going to offer and the people I need to run those services. You can't wing this discussion. You're talking about hiring people. You're talking about building your organization. This is not a wingable conversation. You got to justify that you need to spend X amount of dollars for people to do program management, project management, portfolio management, tools, right? Let me ask you this. Do you think a finance manager has to justify an accountant in their organization? Not likely. PMO managers, they have to justify it. Use that tool to help you do that, okay? So this is a tool that you can go back to and say, these are the service offerings, these are the people I need to do that. That make sense? Awesome. Let's keep going. PMO training and mentoring programs, right? I love this because it's all about helping, growing people, making sure people are growing. And so let's look at these. And I love mentoring programs. One of the key components of running a PMO is to make sure you always have training and growing the skills of your organization. One of the easiest ways of creating these training opportunities in your PMO is through a PMO buddy system or a mentoring program, right? Two different programs. One is very informal, but super successful. I've used it for years. The other more formal, more HR related, but also very, very valuable. So the buddy system, very informal, very successful. A mentoring program, really more tied to HR, but still very, very valuable, and strongly recommend you get those set up as well. Establish these in your organization early. You can always tweak and adjust along the way, but make sure that people know that are in your organization that you care about their career, you care about their training, and you want to keep growing them for them to be successful. And one of the things that I've always gone back to PMI, and I said, hey, what's that certification path? Right? PMI has done an amazing job of kind of laying out. Most project managers are in that 3 to 10 year range. They get their PMP, they get their ACP, right? Program managers get their PGMP. I really love that model. It's really great for staffing discussions. But build your mentoring program, build your buddy system, right? Give your project managers and your folks in your PMO critical hard and soft skills training, right? What are soft skills training? Influence without authority, leadership, communications. What are hard skills or hard training, right? MS Project, Smart Sheets, right? Risk management, issue management, right? There's some very critical hard and soft skills trainings where you're going to set up all that. You're going to establish the baselines of some of the things that you want to set up for your organization. Use this chart from PMI. It's absolutely fabulous, and it really gives you that great foundation of having that conversation with your folks who want to, have 1 year experience and run major portfolios. I've used that as well. All right, next one is your PMO model and your process methodology, right? It's really about understanding that model, but this is where we get real. This is the last stage where we talk about models and methodologies, because this is where we start building it out. This is where you as a PMO manager start creating the processes, the playbooks, and the expectations for your organization. Start light with this. Don't be the cop, be the bad guy. But let's say I want a weekly status reports on Fridays. I want you to have weekly status meetings. I want you to collect your lessons learned. Start really slow in building out those processes. But this is where you get tactical and you really start making things happen. But you want to balance this at the beginning stages, right? Get yourself started, but make sure you keep tweaking and adjusting. But this is making this real. So again, it goes back to this model/methodology chart. You're gonna create playbooks. You're gonna create guides. You're gonna create training, create tools, right? But you're gonna fill this particular table in for what your executives have selected you want to do, and then very different. So, for example, if your executive said, "I want a project supportive PMO," well, your guidelines and training and all those things that you set up are going to be very, very different than a directive PMO. So that's why you have to go back to this, but this is around implementing and really making things real. So use that chart as your guideline, right? Of course, you want to fill it in for what your executive started or selected, but start building out those materials. It's important to get the members of the PMO part of this process, right? So when you get them to be involved in creating templates and creating processes, you get way more adoption and way more acceptance. So you could be cranking these things out and rolling those out. And that's one thing. It's going to take you much longer. You get your actual people in your PMO building them. That's way, way better, and you'll get way more adoption. But don't add too much at the beginning, right? Grow and mature this along the way. You think of running a PMO as a marathon and not a sprint. You don't have to do everything overnight. PMO reporting. This is one of the most valuable aspects of your role as a PMO manager. You own the data. You have all this at your fingertips, right? Therefore, you control the dashboards, the reports, who sees what data. What projects are read? What are the projects spending? What are the risks? What are the issues, right? You got all who's working on what project, right? It's all there for you to share and report. You own that information. This is a critical component of your role, right? So PMO dashboards and reports take time and effort to set up. So again, start this process slowly, get success first, and then expand your PMO. Okay, I can't stress that enough. So when you're setting it up, you're really looking at three big buckets. And again, it's going to depend on the model and the methodology selected, but portfolio, program, project, you've got three buckets of reports, all of them leading to wonderful dashboards, wonderful reports. There's a whole world of reporting that this role will encompass. But don't rush into dashboards, right? Don't rush into this process. It gets more expensive as you go deeper and deeper into this process. The more you're going to have tools, processes, developers, right? All this stuff takes time and it's expensive. It's extremely valuable, but crawl, walk, run. Take it slowly, get success manually first, and then move to an automated solution. Okay, I can't stress that enough. And then you'll start thinking about tools, right? As I mentioned with reporting, don't rush into tools either. There's a million slick salespeople out there. They'll promise you the world. It's not going to happen. Don't fall into that trap. Start with manual processes first, get them working, and then move to an automated tool. Remember, these tools often require a ton of PMO maturity that you may or may not have in your PMO. And if you're just taking a PMO or building a PMO, you're never going to have that. So you'll get to it eventually, but when you're just building a PMO, you don't have the maturity that most of these tools require. Remember that the salesperson will not tell you that. Crawl, walk, run with this process and tools. You need them, but don't rush into them. Make sure you do the manual first and you get success. As I said, tons of portfolio management tools, tons of program and project management tools, more project than program. But here's some, just many hundreds and hundreds of examples. Get out there, get some tools, but go real slow with that. And from a process perspective, I really look at four big buckets: generic PMO processes, portfolio, program, and project. And then, of course, each of them have their own sets of processes as well. Again, you want to crawl, walk, run with that. Get some of these established, grow and build them along the way. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You do not have to do everything overnight. Okay? There's a whole world of tools and processes that you can create for PMO. That's why I love it so much, right? There's a whole world there, but it doesn't mean you have to create them, right? But you can create them, but it's very different, right? So again, you can create a ton of these processes and get them all set up, but I would strongly recommend crawl, walk, run with that, right? Don't fall into the trap of needing a ton of tools and a ton of processes that require a level of maturity that you're not at and most PMOs don't get to. So you got to balance that. Be very, very careful. Make sure you don't start creating processes and understanding what tools you need, right? It's really, really important that you create some processes, understand what tools you need, right? But it doesn't have to be immediately, especially when you're building your PMO. When we talk about running your PMO, very different, but building your PMO, crawl, walk, run with this, okay? So important. That's it. You're done. Complete. That was a ton of work, right? You just built a PMO. Be very, very proud. Not many people have built PMOs, right? You're in a very unique position now to start running this organization. You either built a new PMO, you came into an existing PMO, but you use these same steps to really understand where you're at with your organization. The next step we'll move into is running a PMO, because trust me, it's very, very different than building a PMO, but you have just built and have the foundation for a world-class PMO. Check, check, check. You had a schedule. You cranked off all the items on the schedule. You did a great job and you tracked along the way and you treated it like a project, which is really the only way you're going to be successful. Celebrate that success. That's a huge undertaking. You can now say you've built a PMO, which is amazing, and so spend the time and celebrate how great of a job you did. Okay, so let's do a wrap up. We covered the 12 most important steps to building a sounding and lasting PMO for your organization. Don't take shortcuts, right? Create these 12 different areas for your PMO and mature each PMO area as you run your PMO, right? Understand the value each 12 area brings and the order, right? And so, what are some of those values? Why would you spend time to build a PMO maturity model? Why do you need a project manager playbook? What's the value in the staffing model, right? Understand these answers, right, while you're building through your PMO. That gives you that solid foundation, right? When someone says, hey, why do you need a PMO staffing model? You're going to say, because that justifies, based on the services I offer, that justifies me hiring a portfolio manager, me hiring a tools person, right? So it's a justification tool that you can use with your leadership. So it's really important you understand the 12 steps and you understand the order to which you take those. That's all I've got. I'm going to kick it now to questions. Thank you all very much. More information, the PMO Lifecycle Building, Running, and Shutting Down, up on Amazon, published in 2017, updated it last year. You'll see that was on the bestseller there. We put it up for free. It became a bestseller, which was awesome. It still does very, very well. I'm very proud of the book, and I'm proud of all the material and the hard work I put in there to help you build your organization going forward. Here's all my contact information. Bill Dow at dowpublishingllc.com. Get me on LinkedIn, get me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever the case may be. Thank you all very much. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.